Hi, this is Benji of the Legacy Crusaders YouTube channel. I've been saving some of my replays with my Infernoid deck. I'm going to share them. I've saved multiple matches. They are saved based on the name of the deck that I played against, so alphabetically Altergeist comes up first, although the Altergeist recordings I have are of me losing for the most part. But I'll share it and see if we determine if I could have made better plays or if our opponent could have made better plays. I have three replays. One is a 2-0 where I get 2-0'd, and one is Game 1 where my opponent rage quits. So our opponent here is playing Altergeist. He is going to rage quit. He is going first. I open Decatron, Rekindling, Void Apocalypse, Lava Golem, and Infinite Impermanence, and I'll be top decking Gamma for turn. So let's just play out his turn. So he's going to open the Meliseek and go into the Linkaribo to search the Multi-Faker. He sets 2 Solemn Judgments, which is a weaker card in a lot of matchups because it can only interact with spells, traps, and summons, but are not activated effects, which activated effects of monsters is like the biggest thing in this game nowadays. So I'm going to immediately open and activate Void Apocalypse, and I opt to discard my Decatron to send another Decatron. That way Rekindling can revive both of them. And the reason I opt to do that, where I could just use Apocalypse to send itself to the grave to just send the Decatron and not have to discard, is I predicted that he would activate a trap card and put 2 monsters on board for me to Lava Golem. And if I summon the Lava Golem, he would not be able to... if he activated, I would not be able to normal summon. So I figured the only way I get both Decatron's value is I put it in the graveyard for the Rekindling. But I didn't really have a way to prompt his trap cards at this moment. Also, the only trap card that really stops me at this point would be Imperial Order or Solemn Judgment, which happens to be what he has. So, activate Rekindling, he sees that that is a problem, so he activates Judgment. He's going to activate his Multi-Faker, and it would then... I gamma it because if I let him get the Faker onto the board, there is a chance that... if I let him get the Multi-Faker onto the board, there's a chance he has Protocol, and I wouldn't be able to gamma it then. Although I could have just let him do it and given Lava Golem. But there's no effect I can force to trigger when I use the Lava Golem. Like if he summons a Meliseek, I can tribute his monster with the Lava Golem, and then it would allow me to trigger my Gamma, and I could try and kill him. But because I wasn't going to kill him, I didn't really want him to establish his engine. So that's what happens here. So I go for healthy 5-backs because the number of spells, I believe, is 1, 2. There weren't really enough spells, but I could still try and prepare some sort of a solid board. So he's not playing with many cards at this point. So he draws into Spoofing, and he has Silcoitus. Which, if I were him, that would probably be a decent spot to be in, but he just quits the game. I don't know why. So I'll just show the 2 other Altergeist games I have. I don't win, but I mean, part of sharing these replays isn't necessarily just showing my wins, it's to analyze my gameplay. Like, in this game, it's questionable whether I should have gammed him at that point. Maybe I wanted him to establish monsters so I can Lava Golem him. That's not really that relevant at the time. Letting him get his engine was more pressing. And there's a good chance he just goes into Silk, and Silk is not a card I can really force out the effect for, but Lava Golem could have forced out something like a Meliseek. So let's go into my next game. So I opened Effect Veiler against Altergeist going second, which is not the best card to open unless they open with Marionetter. In this case he opened Meliseek, so it accomplishes pretty much nothing. I also opened Gizmek, which is good in that it's a large monster, but it's problematic if he can get to Faker and Silk and start bouncing me, or if he plays Konkiri and starts blocking my attacks. Otherwise, I have a normal summon, and I have a additional tuner off of Emergency Teleport to try and go into Halki Fibrax. I have Apocalypse, which is a free discard because I have the Gizmek. So I have some things I can do. But let's see how he plays out this turn, because I obviously opted for him to go first. He draws into a Veiler, and he also draws into a Imperial Order, which is problematic. So I summoned the Gizmek in the end phase just to try and apply some pressure. because I can't guarantee that it'll go through once there's trap cards up. I top deck Gamma, which is now dead because I happened to have summoned the Gizmek, but it wasn't the top card before, but it was when I drew it. Currently there is still a Gamma in deck to use the emergency teleport on, although it can summon from hand. I opt to normal the Decatron first, which is possibly a mistake, because Decatron hasn't, because if he has Protocol, he can use it to negate my Decatron, whereas if I just declare battle, he might have to activate one of these other cards first, or reveal that the Protocol is here. Like maybe he would flip it to shuffle it back with spoofing to get Faker, although he probably just wants me to kill the Meliseek. But I can't really know exactly what's going on there. All I know is that he did not go into Linkuriboh, which implied he either had Faker or he wanted it on board for his Protocol, which happened to be the case because he did not banish all of his Linkuribohs. So normal summoning this Decatron at this point is potentially a mistake. There's nothing specific I need to do with the cards I have, so it was going to get summoned eventually. It was just a matter of whether it should have been done first or afterwards. So I summon it, it's just going to get Protocol. He's going to search his Faker. He opts not to summon it yet. Then I use the E-Telly to try and go into... so I use the E-Telly to try and go to Halki Fibrax. He has a spell engrave, I had a spell engrave, and I could put Apocalypse on field to be a third spell to resolve Selene, to try and make Access Code Talker and pop a bunch of his back row, but he had a lot of back row and none of my cards were really interacting with trap cards, so I wasn't in a very good position here. Also, he had 2 trap cards. He didn't resolve... he couldn't resolve Faker off of the resolution of Protocol because it was searched after that resolved from the Meliseek, so I can't know if the trap cards he has are activatable, although odds are they would be. I'm not sure what traps they wouldn't be, so no matter what I would be playing into probably live trap cards, but Imperial Order is not a card I could prepare for. So at this point he's just going to get his engine rolling, and I don't really have any other live cards to play. All I can try and do is kill monsters. So what I continuously will be doing in this game is I continuously summon my Gizmek to try and kill the Silk, and I got confirmed that he played the Konkiri, and the questionable part of my play is whether I should have bothered to attack it at all. I chose to attack it so he put it on board so he might actually link it away so that it would no longer be in his deck, but instead he just going to continue to shuffle it back, which he could do if it was in his hand as well, but he couldn't link it off if it's on the field, so I tried to bait him into getting rid of it. So at this point, he's just going to gain massive advantage because Altergeist is a really sturdy deck. So I'm just trying to see if I can prepare a large Zero Boros by banishing lots of cards. Not sure how I'd possibly get it to land a hit, but I opt not to just quit. I'm not necessarily in a spot where the game is unwinnable, but it's definitely not looking good. Mostly because there's not a lot of cards I can draw in Imperial Order. So nothing really happens this game. I just draw nothing, and I eventually just get OTK'd. Eventually. We'll call it a slow TK. Let's see game 2, where I got to side deck. So this is game 2, and one of my strategies against the trap decks is I like to side in Witch's Strike, and I like to go second, because it gives me 6 cards the opportunity to set Witch's Strike. I just try and come up with some sort of a play where they will negate the summon of a monster or the activation of an effect. Unfortunately, I didn't draw anything that's particularly threatening or negatable, and he doesn't actually have something that negates activations or summons. He has Ash and Imperm, which both negate effects, but that is all they negate. He can set Protocol with Marionetter, but he could also just normal the Meliseek to search the Faker, so depends on what he does as to whether this would be live or not, but it doesn't mean it's strategically incorrect to play. So I Ash his Meliseek, because if he didn't go into the Linkuriboh in the previous game, he went into it this game trying to get a search, so he could be lurking for Faker. And it would imply he probably doesn't have Protocol down, which happens to be the case. So So I top deck Apocalypse. Now, obviously Apocalypse isn't better than other cards I can draw now, but I mean, he does have a Ash Blossom, so only so much can be done here. So I mill my Antra, as it's the least useful card in this particular scenario, just to have something to summon my Prometheus with while maintaining my Seismos and Grave. And I'm going to attempt to shuffle back a back row. Now, in this particular case, I hit the better back row, but because of the card he has down, it doesn't matter. So I target the Spoofing, which he opted not to activate, and he activates Impermanence. So I don't shuffle back the Spoofing, but if I had targeted the Impermanence, it would have gone back to his deck, but the Spoofing would still be on the board, and he still has an Altergeist in hand to resolve its effect. So I declare battle against Linkuriboh, and he uses its effect. Now, something that does happen in this game is at some point there will be Linkuribohs on the board, and I just keep attacking into monsters to get my Gizmek to kill itself, just so I could bring it back to try and inflict damage. But I'm not in a good spot in these matches no matter what, because the cards I have are not really interactable. I guess the most interaction I have here is my Prometheus can tribute to DD or something, as well as my Gizmek can come back should it get removed from the board. But neither of those things are threats to this match. So he top decks a Cosmic, and he's just going to get his Marionetter so he can get his trap cards going. I don't have any play to stop him. He doesn't even set up a protocol, so he's not afraid of me activating effects. So he's just going to do a Link Crossplay. Token Collector could come out if I had it here. It didn't make sense to send it to the graveyard before, but it was an option if I was willing to banish my Seismos. At this point, he's just floating too much for me to keep up with, so the rest of the game is just going to be me getting blown out. Let's take a look at another match. So I'm up against Dinos, and it's going to look like I get blown out, and that's because in game 1 I do get blown out. Because playing against Dino, you don't want to activate your Infirm and your Veiler into Dinosaurs when there's a good chance your opponent has Dinosaurs. So I opt not to use them, hoping there'll be something to use them on later on. So we have to contend with a Dragon, which is live, and I have multiple material, as well as a Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, a Logia, and there's apparently a set Survival's End, which would allow him to destroy all vanillas on field, not that there are any at the moment. So this is a board I can't really play through, because all I have is the summon of the Antra as well as the Sajet. So I suppose if I did try to play through this board, which I didn't, I figured it was silly, I would just side deck, he doesn't need to know what the cards are. I could imperm the Drident, because I can't let my monster get popped. Then I would have to summon Antra and hope he doesn't negate the summon, bounce the Logia, and then normal summon Veiler and try and pop some of his cards. Assuming there were enough spell cards played to do Access Code Talker plays with Selene, which I can't check the graveyard at the moment to see. I don't recall him playing that many spells. So let's get into game 2 and see how we side. So I open more going second offensive cards, which are a bit better in a matchup where you could just get stopped by Dinosaurs. And I do think I make a incorrect play here, and I'll address it when it comes up. So at the moment he's just going to build a board. I have Phantasme, and we know from the previous game that part of his plays are to make a Drident. The Drident is a targeting effect. Well, the first thing I did that was questionable is I probably should have summoned the Phantasme in response to the Linkuriboh in case he went into, what's his name? Blanking. Dulka, but he did not. He went into a Secure Gardna for reasons I can't explain. I think it's to put a non-dinosaur in the graveyard because he didn't have one, but I can't rely that that's what he was going to do. So I should have summoned this earlier just to be safe. Now Drident is on board and it can target. He does target the Phantasme, and I opted not to use the effect, which was silly because I destroy the card, I negate. It's very rare that I'm in a position where Phantasme actually triggers, so I didn't use it like I should have. So now I just got a Dinosaur stuck on my board. I could have dealt with the Drident this way, and he has an extra deck monster and I have Imagination, so that was a misplay on my part. He's going to establish a Quatless so he can negate a spell or a trap card, and then he's going to overlay for Gaga Magician to summon back his So Gaga Magician in this case brought back the Utopic, brought back the Chaka 9 so he can go into Utopic Future. I'm not really familiar with the effect of Gaga Magician. Four Ga's Magician. I'm not familiar with this card. So he can detach 2 materials to summon an Xyz. Oh wait, no. Detach 1 material, target an Xyz in your graveyard, special summon it, but negates effects. So he summoned back his zoo monster so he can go into Utopic Future, and then he overlaid them for Utopic Future Dragon, which can negate a monster effect, and if it negates a monster, if it's a monster you control, you take control of it. So I have to play around a monster that takes control of my monsters. So I'm going to open with Apocalypse as its bait. There are 3 extra deck monsters on board, so I get to mill 3 different monsters. So I purposely sent a Decatron to resolve Rekindling. Whoops. I'm going to go into Vanishment. I go into Vanishment first because I want him to pop it with the Dryden in response to me activating the effect, because then I won't be locked into Infernoids, and it's preferable to not be locked in. So next I activate the Banishment. He negates with the Spotless. I activate it again, and he did not Dryden to me, which I thought was odd. It must be a misplay on his part. Maybe he didn't know it did. Because if he would have done that, I would definitely have lost this game. So, yeah. So I'm going to resolve Imagination. He's going to Dryden to the Banishment significantly late, because it was my way of clearing my levels. I was just going to banish the Utopic Future Dragon. So next, I'm going to use Natest to pop the Lost World. I can't target his monsters because of Lost World, and I control the token. So Rekindling, negate. I send Antra to remove one of the threats, Harmodic to remove, I think, one of my own monsters specifically, and the Petrula to just have a lower level. So I try to I destroy my Tiara because I'm locked into Infernoid because of Void Banishment. With my Harmodic, and I try to bounce the Utopic Future, knowing that he's going to take control of it, because he has no reason not to. So I declare downward to crash the Decatrons, because they're from Rekindling anyway. They're going to go to the Banish Zone, so I don't really want them to go there. Now I shifted the Dirac Egg to attack position, which was incorrect because I didn't really need to crash it. So I just blow everything on the board. But his card is unaffected. So I have Impermanence, and I can negate a monster effect. I mean a spell or trap card effect. He happens to have 2 spell traps. So he's going to immediately activate his Oviraptor, which will let him summon back his Giant Rex, and lets him go into Tornado Dragon. So I'm forced to use my Impermanence early, so I'm going to use it on the Future Dragon. I negate Pill, and then he hard summons what I could see was coming, a Overtext. Now, he'd already used his Miscellaneousaur, so I guess he opted not to bother using the Foolish. I top deck Apocalypse, but I don't need it to clear the board. I actually should have set it on the board because there was a particular issue that came up in this game, but I guess he would have just Tornado Dragoned it. Because I need to activate my Sitesmoss, but I also don't want to activate my Sitesmoss, because now it has to banish a card on the field if I negate, and I'm going to negate Utopic Future Dragon. So he's going to negate me, I have to negate him, and now I'm forced to banish my Deviat. Fortunately, I sent 2 to the graveyard, so I still had 1. He Foolishes. I figured the only card he could possibly play is a Miscellaneousaurus. He summons back Giant Rex, but because it can't attack directly, I'm fine. I tap deck mine, and he concedes because he didn't see it in game 1. He didn't have an out for it, and I guess he didn't want to continue playing through. We've got 1 more game left. Welcome to game 3. I have live hand traps again. Again, opt not to bother imperming or gammaing the monsters when Miscellaneous could be there, because of course it always is. I activated Gamma in response to his Miscellaneousaurus, and he just concedes, even though I think his board is fine, although he would get mined here. So he'd have to establish a way to get his survivals into the graveyard as an out, so he might have to pass for a few turns and then just discard it during the end phase, but that would be a way for him to out mine. Anyways, I'm just going to keep posting my gameplay and my thoughts on my plays. These are not the best games that are recorded. These are just the first ones on the list. that haven't been shown yet. So I'm just going to continue going down the list. You know, no one's perfect. I'm trying my best not to misplay. But, yeah, those Geist games, I don't think there was anything I can do because he just opened too good, and I definitely could have played better in the second game, because if I just killed that Trident, then that play where he could have popped the Imagination wouldn't have been a play, because he wouldn't have had a Trident, so I should have just negated the Trident sooner. Anyways, if you enjoy commentary here, I know this wasn't the best showing of the deck, but if you want to see more, you know, subscribe.